Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm well, Jonathan. Your name's not really Jonathan, though, is it?
No, and no, not at all.
Is it Honus? Like Honus
Well,
Wagner?
Honus's name isn't even Hannes. It's John Wagner. Sometimes Johannes Wagner, but never Hannes on his official documents. Just on his baseball cards.
How about Johan?
Johanna work. Listen, little secret here. The family calls me Nani, or Midge, because I was the youngest. So you can call me either or neither, or you can call me Bucketfoot. You can call me Bucketfoot today. How's that sound?
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Yeah, I thought it'd be fun, John, to think tank through what happened last week. I haven't seen you in a week, so I miss you a lot, by the way.
Said no one ever, but I appreciate the sentiment.
But I will see you in a couple days in Strongsville today.
Yes.
I'm flying out.
You're
today.
flying up. Yeah. I'm bringing the green. Today. I think I'm bringing the green Meanie, the Jeep. My wife suggested I fly, but I'll be doing enough flying in the coming weeks that I probably don't want to fly. So, yeah. Long trip, but it's worth it, right?
It would be a long trip for me to drive from Texas.
Yeah. Other people are doing it. Other people are coming probably from just as far, right? So
I don't have the time.
I get it.
Get up, get back. Speaking of getting up and getting back, last week you and I got to be part of the Grail collection, as we're calling it, and I wanted to talk through think tanking through the mechanics of buying a massive collection like that. Some people have heard some of the details, but I thought we could go into it a little bit more today. I think it'd be fun to break down how we pulled this off in terms of once we bought it. The buying it was actually the easiest part, right?
It was. Listen, you can say that now, but you were a little puckered up. I was a little puckered up for a while, getting the deal done. We didn't want to let it slip through the cracks, and there was a little, as I like to say, mental jujitsu involved with the seller. So, but we were able to overcome that. We pinned the dude to the mat, and we walked away with the spoils.
Victorious. Whenever I decide, just so you know, everybody out there knows how I go into this. If I'm deciding to do a deal, people think it's all about the math and the cards and all that. It's not. I have a tool that helps me decide.
Oh, I thought I was the tool. You actually have a tool. You have a scientific device.
Scientific device. Should I buy this collection? And we'll see what it says. It says, well, I can't read it. Signs point to yes. So there you go. The Magic 8 Ball never leads you astray.
So Mike Moynihan is a financial planner, and he's in his office, and it's hard to believe that device is on your desk, and people's money relies on that little Magic 8 Ball. Huh?
Right. Hold on, I'll show you something funny.
Oh dear.
It's not just that. I obviously make investment decisions with the Magic 8 Ball, but also I have this sign in my office for everyone to see when they walk in.
Is it over the door?
No, because
I was going to say it's you staring at it. It's you staring at it instead of,
Well, I remind myself
self-affirmation, right? Yeah.
I remind myself I can't fix stupid, right? So
yep, exactly. So yeah, listen. It was a big deal. I will tell you that I've bought a lot more cars than that, as have a lot of people. So the mechanics of when I buy a deal, when I make a deal by myself versus the deal that was made last week are essentially the same. It's just a different amount of commas and zeros in there. Listen, when I buy a collection, my goal is to, for whatever, $500, $1,000, it is to exponentially increase the value of the outlay. So say it's $1,000. If I get $5,000 to $10,000 in cards, great. And then the secondary part, which I don't know whether it's secondary or it's a parallel part, is making back that initial investment, which I often do via eBay, selling my duplicates. So this is kind of the same thing. It's just the stakes were a lot higher, right?
Yeah. Before I flew up there and before Chris Sewell, who was involved, came up to be a part of this, we pretty much realized that this was going to be a great deal. We knew some of the cards had been graded within the last few days before we got there, and you could kind of value those pretty easily. And then there was everything else, right? And so what Chris and I did, the simple tripod of the way it worked is I put in 2/3 of the money. Chris Sewell put in 1/3 of the capital. John made the connections. Okay. So that was each of our roles, right? And so then, John, you got to basically, we said, what do you want? You know, and there's some more goodies coming your way, which I can't tell you about because it's secret. But
well, let's stop right there. What I did get was a Trooper Pharmacy card from the early 70s that shows you how to do CPR. So
that's invaluable.
This is a gem that and Trooper Pharmacy was the pharmacy I grew up in my neck of the woods. So really fun. This is something nobody else has, and that'll be going off to KSA in Canada for grading. So I'm looking forward to that because the Canadians do appreciate CPR cards more than anybody. So anyway, yeah, a division of the product and a division of the responsibilities, right? So I guess the responsibilities were first, and then the product was second.
Well, let me ask you, as you went into the deal, what were your expectations to get? What did you want to get out of it?
Well, I wanted cards, right? So here's the interesting part about the dynamics of the people involved here, and it wasn't necessarily thought out or it wasn't necessarily planned, but it worked out that we had somebody that navigates these waters often, which is Chris Sewell, right? He has kind of a small collection compared to maybe yours and I, as far as numbers. You know, his collection is more acute than ours is. You collect a lot of stuff, and I collect pretty much everything. You know, you don't have the vintage hockey or basketball or football that I have, and I certainly don't have the vintage baseball that you have. So it kind of worked out the way the collection was and the way the players were in this little triangle, because I wanted cards and I wanted to grow my collection, right? You wanted cards and grow your collection in a different way, in a more vertical way than I do. I say I'm a horizontal collector. You know, I've been on record saying I have over 4,000 type cards, all that fun stuff. And then Chris brought some expertise and also got maybe a couple cards he wanted, but it was kind of the perfect division of labor, I think. That and you know, it's an ongoing process, which is something I think we all realize, right? I'm selling cards, you're selling cards, Chris is selling cards, so the three of us are selling cards. I have hundreds of Topps posters from the 60s and 70s to sell, and Deckle Edge and Topps Game and stuff like that, stuff that sells, and I have a market on my store to do that. But we all have our different avenues that we're pursuing here after the fact, after the actual deal was done and most of the big cards were divided up.
Yeah. So it's dividing the cards, deciding where to sell them, because you're selling cards on eBay. I'm selling cards on eBay. Chris is selling cards on eBay. We're sending a lot to Greg Morris. We're sending a ton to PSA to be graded. Some of them have already been graded by SGC. And it might feel like, as you're hearing all that, wow, that sounds like a lot of moving parts and very complex. And I would say my experience in real time has been the exact opposite, that I have felt like, okay, Chris is doing this part, John's doing this part, I'm doing these parts. And the division, like you said, the division of labor, the collection really lent itself to kind of playing out it worked really well, right? Where you got a lot of stuff that I like, great, man, you want that? That's perfect, because it's not something I care about. Not that I don't, it's not fair to say. it wasn't part of my collecting habits, so it fit more
Right.
with you.
Right. So the lines between us, you and I, have commonality. You and Chris have commonality, and then Chris and I have commonality, right? Like, I pointed out from the get go that one of my biggest, that made my eyes bulge was the 72 football high numbers, which you may or may not have really understood or
I
known
didn't.
about the history of it. But I said, these are whoppers here, right? And Chris got that. Now you and Chris talking about the Gaudis and the roots and the grading and all that stuff, that's your expertise. So it kind of worked out. There was no, we weren't hogging. None of us were hogging any of the verticals. We were all kind of, we had a partnership with one or the other in discussing a lot of this stuff. So that works out. There was just enough overlap between the three of us and everything that was in there that it works out. Yeah, and the the 60s and the 70s football stuff, like, as I sat there for hours just sorting through because it gave me great joy, but I also understood the value in there and the quality and stuff like that. It's not something that maybe you would normally identify, but again, we like to talk about, whatever's left over in monetary terms. And again, there's 20, 50, $100 bills laying around all over the place that we just have to get them to the right place, whether it's Greg Morris or eBay, PSA, whatever works out. But I think it's been very efficient because the collection itself had everything in it, right? So we have to take several avenues. It's not like you can send everything to one place. And one of my concerns was, with the LCS owner that we bought it from, one of my concerns was his ability to get these cards out on the market, and not just for monetary returns, but I think we all, you and I agree on this. Chris is more of a businessman, but I know he's a collector as well. But you and I are very passionate about making sure these end up in collectors' hands. And fortunately, a lot of these are ending up in collectors' hands that you or I know, which is absolutely thrilling, as opposed to sitting in a box in an LCS for years on end, which a majority of this collection would have done.
Right. And instead, we're going to efficiently and relatively quickly, get all this out there for people to enjoy. Right. And I've enjoyed putting a 68 top set together out of just a box of commons. That was super fun for me. And I got just as excited about that as a Gaudi Ruth, which sounds wrong. Like people would say, no, that can't be true. It's true. It's absolutely true. And I just love cards, and as do you. And Chris Sewell's a great partner. He brought a lot of value to the table for sure, beyond just the financial participation. He is fun to deal with. He knows a lot. I think we all that was literally, John, one of the best hobby days I've ever had was last Tuesday at your house.
Yeah, it was fun, right? It was just, I mentioned on one of your videos about, the pictures of Chris sitting on his floor sorting cards. That's what we were doing, and that's what it's all about. We're telling, jokes that teenagers would tell. We're sorting cards, and it's hard to believe that anybody's legally old enough to buy whiskey like you did in a state store when we were, in our bare feet in my basement sorting cards all day. It was a great experience. I didn't feel overwhelmed at all, which you can sometimes feel overwhelmed with something like that. But I think you and I, like within 5 minutes of seeing these cards in person, I FaceTimed you because the DeLong was there, right? And you're, I've said this before, you're a religious man. I believe that I've kind of walked the path before on earth here. So it's like, that's more than a coincidence to me. I don't think, you might think it's divine intervention. I just think this was supposed to happen. So that's why, here we are a couple weeks later. You've got your DeLong. I've got a bunch of sets that I completed and stuff like that. And it's just, sometimes things are just meant to be. But you and I had more time to kind of absorb it. We talked every day, many times a day up until buying it. We were able to I think we were able to absorb the breadth of the conversation, the collection, and then when we actually did see it, we weren't overwhelmed. We just kind of went to work, right? So,
it turned out, I would say, when I got there and finally put my eyes on it versus some pictures and a FaceTime and this and that, it was better than I had even expected.
And that was my big worry, right? Because I'm dealing with you, I'm dealing with Chris, and we all have different standards and tastes. And I was like, my biggest concern was you guys putting a lot of money out. Hopefully this lives up to the expectations. You have that fear sometimes, so
I hope we put that fear to rest quickly.
You did.
And
I mean, would you have come up with the idea to send it to Greg Morris? Like a lot of those cards, you like thousands and thousands of crisp late 60s, early 70s cards. Like that's a lot to work through, but Greg Morris does attract a premium, and then the return you get versus your efforts are higher than you would probably do if you were to sell those individually. So that
was my
Chris.
idea.
Oh, was
that
it?
Was my
okay.
idea.
Okay.
And Chris was like, I can't believe I didn't think of that. Like, yes,
gotcha.
we should do that.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Right.
In fact, some of those cards will be on Greg Morris starting Monday.
I assume that's like 69, 70, 71 baseball, right?
I
72,
think,
probably
honestly,
73.
I think the first ones that are 69, the 69, 70 basketballs.
Okay, which are all beautiful. Yeah.
He sent a 750 card, order or whatever lot in, and those cards will obviously be listed individually. They're going through the process as of this morning and should be all live by Monday on 10-day auctions, and yeah, that was the thinking. There's a lot of volume here of great stuff. Greg Morris commands a premium. Yes, you pay him for that, but I'm selling cards on eBay as you are. I sold some yesterday from this collection, and at the end of the day, I end up losing close to 15% to eBay. Well, Greg Morris charges 25. So here's the math, right? And I think, wow, if I'm going to pay 15 and the eBay fees are included in the 25%, if you sell a card for $100, you're getting $75 from Greg Morris, and if the hammer price is $100, that's what you get. And so he obviously, Greg Morris, not he particular, but the company doesn't pay 15%. They don't pay what I pay in eBay fees because they're such a large volume seller. They probably have a super great deal and good for them. But if I think it's either me doing it or them doing it, 15 versus 25, they're going to get probably way more than 10% more than I would get if I ran an auction.
Yep.
So it's a net positive from a financial standpoint, not to even touch the amount of time it would take me to list, me and Chris or you or whoever, to list thousands of cards. Thanks, but no thanks. I'd rather, go to the ranch or whatever.
I list a lot of cards on eBay, and I typically I use sold listing templates, right, for my listing, and obviously it's dominated by Greg Morris. So Greg Morris attracts a collector that wants a definitive answer on the condition of the cards. There's no ambiguity about it, right? And whatever they undergrade or whatever, but anyway, they do command a premium over top of what you and I would get if we had sold those on eBay. So if that's $100 card that we get, Greg Morris is most likely getting $115 to $125 for that card, which means, the net for this operation is higher than the net than if we had done it alone, and then, like you say, minus the labor part, which is a big portion of it. So, and eyeballs are everything. There's been plenty of challengers to eBay, and you're paying for the marketing, you're paying for customer acquisition. That's what your fees are paying for. So anyway, if you can send a box of thousands of cards off to Greg Morris, and that's the end of your effort, and just receive checks, it's wise to do it that way, especially with the condition these cards were in. These weren't 3 to 5s. These are 7 to 9s, most of those cards.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't put a grade value, but they're pushing EX. Most of them are minimum EX, but they're probably NMs, near mints, most of those cards. So it's really is a no-brainer. And why Greg Morris versus, grading everything. Well, obviously you're not going to pay $20 in 30 days or 60 days for a card that's going to sell for 25, maybe 30, because that's a lot of effort and time and stuff like that. So you probably want to sell that. Some of those league leader cards that got sent to Greg Morris, yes, they would grade very high, but it's not worth, as you like to say, it's not worth the squeeze. You have to factor in time and effort and all that stuff.
Yep, totally agree. What's the thing from the collection that you mentioned the 72 Topps high number football? Is there something else that stands out that you're thrilled that you were able to add to your collection?
Well, I'm adding to my collection. Yeah, I got to finish. I think the only thing we all got territorial with is, this may sound odd, but like that 60 Fleer set really set all three of us off for some reason. And I had 7 cards I needed, and there was a Ruth, and there was a Cobb, and there was a Ted Williams, and me and my dog decided to take on any comers, and we were very territorial with that. And so but it's funny, it's ironic, right? And I'm an oddball collector as well. So like I said, I finished my 60 Fleer set, which was huge for me. With that said, there were 70 cards left over that were all probably 7s if you were to grade them. You have a Gehrig, I know that, but those cards were beautiful, right? Absolutely beautiful. So, stuff like that. I did get to finish. Um, did I finish any other sets? Anyway, I think I finished the Laughlin set. I needed a couple more of the Laughlins, the 70 Fleer Laughlins. Even though Joe called them out as 68s, they do have a 68 copyright on the back, but they're 1970 Fleer, and it's a set that people love, and I sell them outside of this collection. But now I have a box of probably 100, 150 that can also go on, and those things again are in incredible condition. And I guess I'm using a lot of words, but the thing that keeps coming up, Mike, is condition, right? The condition of the cards, especially the 60s, 70s. I mean, listen, you had a Gehrig 5 from the 30s, which was pretty incredible. But we have to remember, our hobby tends to have a very short memory, and we have to remember that when these cards were pulled from packs, we didn't have penny sleeves and monster boxes and 800 count boxes. Like, somehow these cards survived over 50 years and came to us in a condition that was comparable to modern cards coming out of a pack, which is, I think that's my favorite part, other than the cards. I think it's the stuff like that, the little nuances of the collection. I think really, it makes me happy that there's a collection still out there. It makes me happy that this gentleman had the foresight to take good care of these cards when I wasn't doing that at the same time. We didn't even have crappy PVC sleeves back then in the early 70s. So like, these things went somewhere. I opened up a box, I think a 73 wax box, a real 73 wax box that had the 73 cards still in it. Like, he had opened them up, taken the gum and the packs out, and then put them back in the box. And who knows how long they sat there, but condition, I think, is incredible. The little discoveries like the cash-ins were pretty cool. The Sport Kings, like stuff that I don't normally see. I've never held a 33 Goudy set in my hand, but I have Goudys. Right. Never held a Diamond Kings or a DeLong set, but it's fun to, I'm a big history buff of the hobby and of the various sports, so I thoroughly enjoyed those aspects as well. And I tend to look at, as with my collecting, I tend to look at the broader picture, and I find great joy in so many things, and groups of things, not just individual cards.
So do you feel like your goal was accomplished with the collection in terms of what you got? And I mean, because I don't remember Chris and I ever saying no to you when you asked for something. So
right. Yeah, I mean, I had a list, but you can't get everything you want, right? Like, I had a list of stuff, but there's one of the things that I struggle with on a daily basis in the hobby, and in particular with this deal, is I don't like, unfortunately, it's a harsh reality that money is involved, right? So I hate I hate the money part of it. The money part of it makes me uncomfortable. So anytime we're talking about that, I'm not going to be a hard ass about what I should get or what I shouldn't get, because I don't want that to diminish my joy in the hobby. It's like a musician who has to write commercial jingles to to make a living. Are they really happy? If they just have to pound out 30-second songs, 8 hours a day. So I try to separate, and it is a struggle, the money part with the actual joy of collecting, because so much of the hobby is driven by money these days, right? Base cards are worthless because it's all about was about relics. Now it's about autos. Pretty soon it's going to be about something else. And, I it's a struggle, because that to me is not a hobby. It's work, and I
But
do
this,
plenty of work during the week. I don't want to do it in my hobby, right?
I'm the same way. And this, again, this is a dynamic where there's so many things that I would love to keep out of this. And and the realization that I can't keep it all. It's just part of it. Am I disappointed or what's my feel? Just is what it is. I mean, there's cards I'm holding back that I hope to not have to sell if we can make enough money in terms of really me getting whole is priority number one, right? If I can get my initial investment back, that's kind of like if I was to put them in order, get that back, because that makes Julie happy and makes her realize, okay, that we're not, our family isn't any worse off than we were, before this deal. And great. Keeping a few cards, or even more than a few, goal number 2. Goal number 3 is actually make profit. So that's, if I was to rank them, that's how they would rank. And it's really 1, 2, and then 3 is way further down, and I think all 3 will be accomplished. My work phone's ringing. I don't need to answer that. So let me send them to voicemail. Reject. I'm rejecting that call. Well, I tried to.
You're not that good with that stuff, are you?
No, I'm technology.
So real quick. Oh, there we go. Look at that. We lost Mike. So one thing to remember. There you go. One thing to remember, Mike, is that this isn't how you should make your financial decisions. Right now, we kind of talked about the cards that were involved that were graded. There's real data on what their worth was. There's real, I mean, it's not ambiguous. There's real data, and it isn't a last sold. It's more like, a continual trend of how these cards sell. Now, like any other asset, barring some unforeseen circumstances, they are worth what they are worth, right? I mean, you could say the same in the investment market. In case something happens somewhere, a ship hits a bridge in Baltimore, it depresses a certain sector. These cards are nothing's going to happen to Babe Ruth or Lou Gehrig's legacy from here on out. So those cards are worth what it's not like there was a bunch of so and so, Clayton Kershaw cards or whatever, Wemby cards that were here that were worth X amount of money, and something happens to Wemby and you never see him again. Like this was a safe investment. This is like, bonds and T-bills probably, right?
Well, except for the giant stash of Wander Franco rookies, but
yeah, exactly. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like, this is something that has tangible value. It's not speculation. Like some of the way things roll in the hobby these days. So there was a certain safety net here that is unlike many deals that are done in the hobby these days.
No doubt. This was as easy a no-brainer as you'll ever have. This was absolutely, everybody I've talked to and told it, would you have done the deal? Of course. Like everybody, it's literally unanimous in terms of, did the deal need to get done? Was it a fair price point? Yes. Was it there's still a lot of work and cost to grade and all the things that we're going to be doing. So our cost didn't end with just plopping down the money for the collection. There's more than that, but it's not so egregious where it still makes it worth it, and it's still 100% no brainer.
You don't have to worry about, you don't have to worry about a 1-on-1 and then moving that thing real quick. These cards have a market now, they'll have a market in the future. So, one of the things that I think that helps not getting overwhelmed by the collection is the fact that there is time. You don't need to be the first to market, or there's whatever 5 or 6 69-70 Topps basketball rulers in there that will go to PSA, and they don't need to be turned around in 10 days. They can be turned around in 30 days because the market will still be there for items like that. So that helps, right? Like the newest set of cards that was in there, right? You have that on the market right now, and you've had incredible success with that. Like, the latest cards were from 2007, and you've sold a bunch of those. And even though
did I tell you about the Ruth?
Yeah, jersey? You called me last night and told me, which is crazy, right? Yeah. Why don't you tell the listeners?
Yeah, so viewers. There's a 07 Gaudi, the Immortals. And if you go on eBay right now, I've got several of them up for sale.
Probably no competition, by the way, for those cards right now. You're probably the only one that has them up there. I am
indeed, because they were the pack odds were 1 in every 288 hobby packs, 1 of those in every 960 retail packs. So it's basically a case hit. Before there were case hits, it was they came about 1 per case. In terms of just the pack odds, some people say, I've heard a guy tell me, "Oh, I used to pull one of those every pack," and I'm like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
He was full baloney. Yeah.
So I had a guy that was building the set, and he bought several. And he said, "Hey, you don't happen to have the Ruth, do you?" And I said, "Yeah. In fact, it's on eBay." And he went and found it and paid for it immediately. $900. I listed it for what I thought was a crazy price. Like, nobody's going to pay this, but hey, let's see. $900 for a jersey relic with a pinstripe of Babe Ruth. And it sold. He paid for it instantly. And I shipped it off this morning, as a matter of fact, to eBay Authentication in Florida. But that set, which I can't remember what we valued it at. I think we valued it at $1,000, maybe $1,200 total, which I thought was feels a little high. Turns out I was, again, I've only sold.
Beckett had the Ruth at $200, but obviously some of their information is outdated.
just a little bit of it. Yeah. Just success stories like that. And I think as we work through this collection, we're going to have more and more of those. Oh, a certain card came back in a higher grade. I sent in 3 1970 Topps Tom Seavers, and raw, that card's $20 to $40, right? These were super sharp. If we don't get 8s, then I'm quitting the grading game, because I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. I have no idea. But if they're 8s, they're $150. Each card's costing $20 to grade. So if one comes back, if they come back 8s, $60 turns into $450 in terms of selling resale value. If one of them comes back a 9, which there's an outside shot, I don't think so, but maybe. I'm not grading them, so somebody else will. $1,000 for a 9. And so there's huge upside potential, given, like as you said earlier, very poignantly, the quality of the condition of these cards made it the other no-brainer part of it was, we're sending these off for grading. There's too much, like you said, the rulers, yes, great, they're beautiful, send them off, let's see what happens, spin the wheel. Right. And it'll be a fun process as we go to see how this all turns out over the next 6 months. It's going to take a while, but it'll be fun.
Right. Yeah. And again, we think we've discovered everything, but it's neat to keep seeing stuff pop up, and again, getting stuff out to collectors. Not that wouldn't have happened anyway, but it's nicer having fewer steps between this collection and the collectors. It doesn't have to sit in a LCS or get traipsed around from show to show to show. These cards, a lot of it's bringing joy to a lot of people, which helps for sure.
Do you do a lot of traipsing?
I traipse all the time. Yep. I do step ball change. I do shajma, and every now and then I'll do a pirouette. So I married a dancer. So every one of my moves has a name. So
that's good. The last point I want to make before we put a bow on this episode is the best part about it is that we got to do it together. I didn't do this in a vacuum. I had plenty of people to share it with. We did a live stream. We've done video. It's been people coming along with us as we do this. And I think people really enjoy that. I think me getting to be with you and Chris and Joe and, the phone calls I've had with people just can't, oh my gosh, and wanting to hear about it themselves personally. And that's been a true extra ancillary joy to this and obviously I consider you a great friend, and the fact that you even called me to begin with was fantastic. So I'm really grateful to you for your part and role in all of this.
Yeah. And my wife always says, anytime I meet men on the internet and they sleep over my house, it's a win-win for everybody. So I think it was a great time. So
it was.
Yes.
Well, that's it.
That's it, man. We're you're a card mogul now. Congratulations. I assume these deals happen every week, but apparently not. Apparently this was a big one. I know that sounds blasé, but I'm like, I just assumed this happened to somebody every week, but it's good to know that we kind of found a nice little collection.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for watching this week, and we'll see you guys next time for another Hobby Think Tank. Let us know what you think down below. Ask questions. Happy to be as transparent as we can be and answer anything you guys have. So thanks.
Sweet.